what else has been going on around defence and sanctions?
Yeah, sanctions in particular. Good afternoon, everybody. We're constantly being reminded how tough the United Kingdom is when it comes to fighting against the authoritarianism of Putin and Russia. The House of Commons Library has produced a briefing paper with detail about sanctions against Russia and why do we do it. They're considered to be a useful foreign policy tool. They're restrictive measures intended to be temporary that can be used to force change in behaviour, constrain a country's actions, or to communicate a political message to other countries and individuals. So I thought we'd examine exactly how they do change behaviour, and we're able to look at this through the details provided by the Department for Business and Trade. But before we go into that, we'll just look at the map, because this has been touched upon in the mainstream, but I think not enough inferences have been drawn. I've got arrows on a map here showing the western and southern parts of Russia and the countries that border Russia, particularly Finland, Estonia, Latvia, Georgia, Azerbaijan, and Kazakhstan. So what we're going to do is really follow a story that's to do with the sanctions that have been implemented against Russia, and I draw your attention to the fact that £9.8 billion, which is the figure that's not being traded with Russia, is roughly equivalent to the commitment for the defence budget to Ukraine. So that's sort of worthy of significance, but really to highlight that where exports haven't been made to Russia, they must, of course, have gone somewhere else. And highlighted in the mainstream media is the enormous rise of imports in cars to Azerbaijan. We see for the last quarter an increase of 28.7% to Azerbaijan, and we see that cars total 58.2% of goods to Azerbaijan. Is this a one-off? Kazakhstan, an increase of 89.2% in the last quarter, with cars listed as 24.6 million or 6.8% of that. Georgia, too, an increase of 26%, and cars forming 21% of that. Estonia, an increase of 11%, more moderate, cars 15% of that, £50 million, and Finland accounting for 6.9% increase, with cars at 5.8% or £85 million, obviously closer to home, more realistic that they would have had an existing conduit there. And then finally, Latvia, again, a moderate increase of 5.2%, but cars up, or rather at around £34 million or 8.9%. So it's obvious in a way, if one is to eliminate the possibility of coincidence, that whilst cars aren't being exported directly to Russia, they are, of course, going into Russia, most likely over the border from these countries that do import in such large quantities now. So it looks like a gigantic book cooking exercise to make it look like sanctions do actually do something, to be able to continually talk tough. And this, of course, relates back to Mike's previous segment on the steps being made towards a war footing. But of course, what is it that the industry and the government are saying about the cars themselves? So we'll have a quick look at where we're supposed to be going on this path to zero emissions. We've got the declaration from September last year about 80% of new cars and 70% of new vans to be at zero emissions, whatever exactly that means, by 2030. And the detail from that sets a minimum annual target, starting with a requirement for 22% of new cars sold in 2024 to be zero emission. Now, what they don't specify here is who those cars are to be sold to, or indeed where. And we go on to the Society for the Motor Manufacturers and Traders, who have a publication, a monthly publication, and they've got statistics from January in which they confirm that the bulk of production this month, which has gone up dramatically, was for export. So nearly 80% going for export. Overseas shipments up 11.6%. Of course, they're at pains to suggest that these increases really have only been affected in terms of the trade with the US, China, and Japan and Australia. But I think we can extrapolate from that the figures we've looked at confirm that there have been significant increases elsewhere, particularly on the borders with Russia. And again, they go on to say that on the electrical vehicle side of it, UK production of battery electric, plug-in hybrid and hybrid vehicles rose again by a combined 4.5% to account for 35.7% of overall output. So therefore, that suggests that it's well above the government target. However, in line with overall figures, the majority of these models were exported. So this is the government putting forward the argument not only that we are winning against Putin economically because we are imposing these sanctions and continually modifying them, but also that we're winning in terms of electric vehicles and indeed vehicle production. And in actual fact, none of those things is true.
Yes. Okay. Thank you.